Imagine walking into a luxurious mansion, chandeliers sparkling above, tables filled with investors, business partners, and millionaires from around the world. Everyone is dressed in their finest, glasses of champagne raised in polished hands, conversations buzzing with money, power, and influence. And right at the center of it all, a woman, a millionaire who built her empire from the ground up, confident, sharp, and in control of every detail. But on this particular evening, something happened that shattered her flawless image. A crucial guest from China had arrived. He was the key to closing a massive international deal, one that would expand her empire beyond borders. The problem? Nobody in the room spoke Chinese. Not her advisors, not her assistants, not even the so-called elite who bragged about traveling the world. Everyone froze. The millionaire's smile vanished. Her voice grew sharp, her temper flaring. You could feel the tension in the air. It was embarrassing. How could a room full of powerful people be so helpless? Her face turned red. Her hands slammed against the table. She was fuming. Just when the deal seemed ready to collapse, a soft voice spoke from the back. It wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't a translator. It wasn't one of her well-paid advisors. It was the maid's daughter. A young girl, barely in her 20s, who had been quietly serving drinks, suddenly began speaking fluent Chinese. Every head in the room turned, and in that single moment, everything changed. This is the story of how the most unexpected person in the room turned humiliation into triumph. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happened next. The night had been planned down to the tiniest detail. The millionaire woman, Veronica Hayes, wasn't just wealthy. She was respected, admired, and sometimes even feared in the business world. Her empire stretched across real estate, fashion, and technology. Tonight's dinner was supposed to be her crowning moment, an exclusive gathering where she would announce her expansion into Asia. Investors from different countries had flown in just to hear her vision. The mansion glowed with golden light. Classical music floated through the air as waiters in crisp uniforms moved gracefully between the guests, balancing trays of expensive champagne. Veronica herself stood tall in a glittering emerald dress, every inch of her radiating control and elegance. Young entrepreneurs in the room whispered her name with admiration. To them, she was living proof that success wasn't just for men in suits. She was a force of her own. But beneath that calm exterior, Veronica was restless. The highlight of the evening was the arrival of Mr. Lai, a powerful Chinese businessman whose investment could take her company global. When he walked in, silence fell. He was older, dignified, and carried an air of quiet authority. Everyone watched as Veronica approached him, extending her hand with a polished smile. Cameras flashed, investors leaned in, and the deal that could change everything seemed only seconds away. Then, confusion. Mr. Lai greeted her warmly, but in Mandarin. Veronica blinked, unsure how to respond. She glanced at her advisors, her assistants, even her legal team. Not one of them understood him. The smile on her face faltered. She tried to steer the conversation in English, but Mr. Li's puzzled expression grew. Within moments, the entire room realized the truth. No one could communicate with him. The silence was brutal. Guests exchanged uncomfortable looks. Veronica's carefully crafted image cracked. How could she, a woman known for her attention to detail, overlook something this simple yet crucial? Her jaw tightened. Whispers began to circulate, and Veronica's face flushed with anger. She slammed her glass down harder than she intended, her voice rising as she barked at her staff. Why wasn't this handled? The grand evening was unraveling, and her reputation was at stake. The room grew tense, the way air thickens before a storm. Veronica's emerald dress shimmered under the chandelier, but her composure was cracking. She had built her empire on preparation, on never being caught off guard. Yet here she was, surrounded by billion-dollar investors, with the one man who mattered most standing silently before her, waiting for words she could not provide. Mr. Lai shifted politely, his eyes calm yet unreadable. He spoke again in Mandarin, slowly this time, as if trying to make himself clearer. Veronica glanced desperately at her advisors. One shuffled his papers, another nervously checked his phone, but none dared to step forward. They all avoided her gaze. It was humiliating. Whispers filled the hall like wildfire. A group of young tech founders muttered, "How could she not hire a translator?" An older investor smirked, whispering, "So much for being a global visionary." The sting of judgment cut deeper than she expected. Veronica's fists tightened at her sides. Her empire had always been about control, controlling markets, negotiations, and outcomes. But at this moment, she was losing everything. Her temper flared. She spun toward her staff. Did nobody think ahead? She barked, her voice sharp and cold. Her assistants looked down, afraid to meet her eyes. The once celebratory evening was unraveling into a display of chaos and weakness. Even the music, still playing softly in the background, sounded mocking. And then, another blow. Mr. Lai's translator, who was supposed to accompany him, had been delayed at the airport. Veronica didn't know this, but the whispers in the room only grew louder. It looked like pure negligence on her part. Veronica felt cornered, like a lion trapped in a cage of her own making. This wasn't just about a deal anymore. This was about her reputation, her authority, her very image as a woman who could stand toe-to-toe with the most powerful men in business. And right now, she was on the verge of losing it all. She exhaled sharply, trying to salvage what she could. "We'll figure this out," she said through clenched teeth, forcing a smile for the crowd, but her eyes betrayed her fury. She had built this night for years, and it was collapsing because of a language barrier. No one noticed the quiet figure in the corner. Until she cleared her throat. It was the maid's daughter, a young woman balancing a tray of empty glasses, her gaze steady and calm. Her lips parted, and in fluent Mandarin, she spoke directly to Mr. Li. The entire room froze. All eyes turned toward the voice. For a moment, it felt like the entire mansion had stopped breathing. Bing! The chandeliers still glimmered. The violin still played in the background, but every single guest was frozen, stunned by what they were witnessing. The maid's daughter, her name was Emily, stood tall despite her modest black dress and apron. She was only 22, a quiet girl who usually blended into the background. She wasn't supposed to be noticed at nights like this. Her role was to refill glasses, clear plates, and disappear without anyone remembering her face. Yet here she was, confidently speaking fluent Mandarin. Mr. Li's stern expression softened instantly. His eyes lit up with recognition, and for the first time that evening, he smiled warmly. He responded to her in Chinese, and Emily nodded, answering with perfect intonation, her tone respectful yet assured. The room that had moments ago been suffocating with tension was now hanging on her every word. Whispers rippled across the hall. Is she speaks Chinese? Who is she? Isn't that the maid's daughter? Guests leaned forward, fascinated. The same entrepreneurs who mocked Veronica minutes earlier were now glued to Emily, astonished at her unexpected brilliance. Veronica, still fuming, blinked in disbelief. She had built her empire with high-priced advisors, elite consultants, and powerful allies, yet the one saving her tonight was a young woman who worked in the shadows of her home. For the first time, Veronica's pride was shaken, and she didn't like feeling powerless, but she couldn't deny that Emily was pulling her out of disaster. Emily's voice carried through the grand hall, steady and clear as she translated Mr. Lai's words into English. And Mr. Lai says he is honored to be here. He appreciates the invitation and looks forward to discussing the partnership. The relief was palpable. Gasps of admiration followed. Investors straightened in their chairs, nodding approvingly. The tension that had gripped the room seemed to dissolve, replaced by curiosity and even respect for the maid's daughter who had just saved the night. Veronica's face remained unreadable, but her mind raced. How could this young girl, someone no one had considered important, suddenly become the center of attention? Mr. Lai chuckled, saying something in Mandarin that made Emily smile. She translated quickly. The room erupted in laughter, applause echoing across the mansion. And for the first time that evening, the power had shifted not to Veronica, not to her advisors, but to the maid's daughter who dared to step forward. The applause slowly faded, but the energy in the mansion had completely transformed. Where moments earlier there had been whispers of doubt and mockery, now there was admiration, and all of it directed at Emily. Emily stood confidently beside Mr. Loy, no longer just a servant in the background, but the bridge between two worlds. She translated smoothly as Veronica and Mr. Loy began their conversation. Her words carried weight, and with each phrase, the respect in the room shifted further toward her. Sir, or you. Investors leaned in, hanging on every exchange. They were impressed not just by her language skills, but by the way she carried herself, calm, poised, and unshaken despite the high stakes. Some even scribbled notes, whispering to one another, all like, girl has potential. Veronica, however, was in turmoil. Yet now, it was Emily who had captured the room's attention. Still, Veronica was pragmatic. She adjusted her posture, forcing a smile as she allowed Emily to continue translating. If this was what it took to secure Mr. Lie's investment, then so be it. Inside, though, she vowed to never again underestimate anyone, even those she once overlooked. Mr. Lie's demeanor grew warmer with every passing minute. He chuckled at Emily's phrasing, nodded approvingly at her cultural sensitivity, and clearly enjoyed the conversation more than he had in years. Finally, he addressed the room through her. A partnership is not just about money. It is about trust, respect, and understanding. Tonight, I have seen all three. The words, translated flawlessly by Emily, sent a wave of relief through Veronica. Investors clapped politely, some exchanging impressed glances. The deal was not only back on track, it was stronger than ever. Veronica lifted her glass, raising it toward Mr. Lie and the crowd. To new beginnings, she declared. The guests echoed her toast, but everyone knew the true turning point of the night had come not from her power, but from the courage of a maid's daughter who refused to stay silent. Emily lowered her gaze humbly, returning to her quiet corner once the immediate pressure was gone. But nothing about her was ordinary anymore. She had become the unexpected hero of the evening. The clinking of glasses rang through the grand hall as the toast ended, but beneath the polished surface of the evening, a deeper shift had occurred. Veronica Hayes, once the flawless centerpiece of the night, now stood in quiet reflection while Emily, the maid's daughter, became the silent anchor of success. Mr. Lie continued his conversation, his words flowing smoothly through Emily's translation. She not only spoke Mandarin with precision, but also carried a cultural awareness that elevated the dialogue. She chose her words carefully, honoring Mr. Lie's traditions and values. Every phrase built a bridge of trust that no contract could create on its own. At last, Mr. Lie placed his hand on the table, firm but calm. He spoke in Mandarin, his tone steady. Emily translated, I am willing to proceed. I see integrity here, and I respect the resilience to overcome challenges. The room erupted in polite applause, but this time it was more than celebration. It was admiration. The investors no longer doubted Veronica's ability to close the deal. But they also knew the truth. Without Emily, this night would have ended in embarrassment and loss. The loss. Veronica raised her glass again, smiling with a mix of gratitude and pride. Yet deep down, she wrestled with an unfamiliar feeling, humility. All her wealth, all her power, all her years of planning had been saved not by her elite circle, but by a young woman society barely noticed. After the meeting ended, as guests filed out with satisfied smiles, Veronica approached Emily privately. Her emerald dress shimmered under the dimming lights, but her voice was softer now. You changed everything tonight, she admitted. Tonight, she admitted. I owe you more than I can say. Emily shook her head, her voice gentle. You don't owe me, ma'am. Sometimes people just need someone to listen, someone who understands. Veronica studied her for a long moment, realizing that true power didn't always come from money or reputation. Sometimes it came from unexpected places, from courage, from knowledge, from those willing to step forward when everyone else stayed silent. As the night ended, Emily returned to her modest duties, but the room buzzed with whispers of her name. Investors who once overlooked her now saw her differently. The maid's daughter had reminded everyone, including Veronica, that brilliance can come from anywhere. That night ended very differently from how it began. Veronica Hayes, the millionaire who prided herself on being in control, learned a lesson she could never buy with money. Greatness doesn't always wear a suit or sparkle under a chandelier. Sometimes it's found in the quiet courage of someone no one notices, until they rise when it matters most. Emily, the maid's daughter, didn't come to the mansion expecting to change lives. She came to help her mother, to serve quietly in the background. Yet when the moment of crisis came, she stepped forward, using what she knew without hesitation. And in doing so, she shifted the balance of the entire night. The deal was sealed, the investors left impressed, and Veronica's empire grew stronger. But more importantly, Veronica's perspective changed. She realized that leadership isn't just about power, it's about recognizing the potential in others, even those the world tries to keep invisible. And that is the real lesson of this story. Never underestimate anyone. Never dismiss the quiet ones. Because sometimes the most extraordinary strength comes from the people you least expect. So ask yourself, who around you has a voice you haven't listened to yet? Who has a gift you've overlooked? And more importantly, are you ready to step forward when your moment comes? If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think differently, then you're exactly where you need to be. On this channel, we bring you powerful stories that remind you of the courage, resilience, and hidden strength inside ordinary people. Backhand index pointing right, don't just watch. Join our community. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and never miss a story that could change the way you see the world.